go. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today, especially on a Sunday. I'm Nina Kong-Surtees. I'm the founder and Chief Art Legacy Advisor of Smart Advisory. Today, I'm so thrilled and honored to have our guest artist, Justice Laub, aka Good Energy. Today, Justice is going to talk about his journey, how he started as lesser than, and two legendary artists. Justin is an entrepreneur and a visual artist from Santa Rosa, California. He understands and articulates complex cultural and scientific concepts, patterns and frameworks to others in a simple and digestible and commercially beneficial manner. His goal is to empower the lesser than, the creators on the fringe as much as he has been, and let them know that a winding path often leads to most rewarding outcome. That is super exciting. This is why we're so thrilled to have Justice to share his incredible journey. First off, Justice, thank you so much for being here today and share your journey as an artist, as an entrepreneur, and what it takes to break into the NFT space and blockchain. So to start, I would love to share this work with everyone. It's called Construct. Let me just pull it up. And
thanks for having me today, of course.
I'm sorry?
Oh, thanks for having me today.
Oh, my pleasure, my pleasure. Yeah, it's such a pleasure to have you here. I'm just gonna do a full screen. Oh, before we do that, let me just do one little trick. Let me just do share screen first. So I'm gonna share a screen with everyone. Share. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
All right, fantastic. I'm gonna do this full screen mode so that way people could see it better. So yeah, can you tell us about this work? How did it all begin and the process of creating this fantastic work?
Sure. So one of the things when I'm creating good energy is I like to have it so that the canvas talks to me. And I don't know if you guys, anyone can relate, but one of the things that I've been really focused on with metaphysical space and time with postcards is this whole idea of being in the same place, or different places at the same time in time and space. So I like to think about time as a location, where it's like if I told you to meet me at 4th and Main Street in your town, but there wasn't a time and date attached to that, we could never meet, really. It would be unlikely. So this is under the water mixed with outer space, because that gold thing's kind of like a shark. It's kind of a submarine, and it's drifting between these different creatures. And, you basically have this whole, on Earth, when you talk about these things, people think that you're like stoned or something, or taking shrooms, but you could be I'm just totally sober. I don't even like to smoke weed, but I'm an endorser of other people doing it. But it's like, there's an entire world going on under the ocean. And, you could always, get sad about things like the Texas-sized garbage pile in the ocean or us killing all the sea life. But sometimes I like to just focus on the magic and the beauty. So
that's amazing. I love that you're mentioning of the metaphysical world, like what we're doing right now, right? Like,
yeah, we are.
Our interview is happening right now, and it's whoever is, can participate in this conversation. So I think that's just a really beautiful aspect of looking in our world we're currently dealing with, especially with technology. And I love the way you merge the outer space into the sea. Like there's like a connection between the earth itself and the outer space that we often wonder about, right? Like it can be very mystical in some ways, but in other ways, it's just there's a whole world outside our earth, right? Whether it's underneath it or above us. So I really like that analogy in terms of like connecting those two realms together.
Thank you so much for relating and feeling that. Just like as another human being, art is it's a peek into the imagination, but just being another human that you are and everyone else that's a human here, how crazy and weird is it that there's like an entire other civilization that actually, something that fascinates me about the ocean is outside of human world and outer space, outside of politics, there's no borders in the ocean for the animals that live there. There's no like, oh, I'm from, the Indian Ocean and I'm from this other place. It's more of like they're all just existing together, and it's pretty crazy and cool. And then in outer space, like, it's just so insane to me that I think our Earth travels like over 1 million miles a day or something insane, but it's like we're literally, you and I are on this planet and everyone here, and we're just, you know, traveling through outer space. We have this, one of the things I try to get away from in the art that I think a lot of people, at least people, have this false sense of control. We go from one place in a house with, we set the temperature, we've designed it all, we get into a car, we're following these systems, and we're all following these kind of societal rules. But deep down on a biological level, there's no control. And I think letting go of that false sense allows you to create, whether it's as an artist creating or it's a person viewing the art and taking these new ideas into your house, into your life. But we must all let go of this false sense of control. I think that's really important.
I definitely can relate to that. And I definitely agree with that. And the way you phrase it, it's just beautifully said. Yes, like as a society, as a culture and history, yes, like we have been like conditioned to follow certain rules and certain conventions, and or what you call is like false sense of control, right? Like as humans, we were conditioned, we were taught that way. But in nature, things don't work that way, right? Like things just flow without even like a thinking, or it just moves, right? Like without us like really consciously thinking about it, right? Like for instance, time is another example. It goes on whether we like it or not, or have control or not, right? Like it's just moves on. It doesn't wait for anyone, right?
It doesn't. Yeah, that's so true. I mean, well, yeah, I agree exactly with what you said. Time doesn't wait for anyone is such a great way of stating it. And I think that getting into this both false sense of control and also pattern matching is incredibly boring.
Mm.
Going through, because humans, a lot of humans like to operate on a loop, doing the exact same thing every day. And then if something's like a little bit different, or a person is not following this exact same loop, it scares people sometimes because they're so focused on their own loop that they may be like, oh, why is this person, they don't even really, not following the loop. What's the matter with them? And I think we should be inspired from non-loop followers. You don't want to be too far in left field where you can't relate with anyone and you're annoying and you're just, some people do that. And they're just like, having a one-way conversation. But I think if people can converse, understand, listen, share their ideas, and be a part of society, that we should embrace those people.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. And again, like also beautifully said. I think artists are like have that, right? That kind of freedom to create something that could be unconventional, right? Like you kind of break that cycle. I mean, depending on the artist who you talk to, but it's just that
Yeah,
the artist, I think, has the greatest like gift, or in a path where they have a lot more freedom to choose how they want to present their work and how they perceive the world, right? And I think that takes a lot of courage. I think that's one thing that differentiates artists from like more traditional like career paths, is that like the courage to try something else and try something new, and be in a growth mindset. I think that's one thing that some people forget, is that as humans, we're not fixated into one confined space, but we are meant to grow, right? Like learn things and be open to new possibilities.
absolutely. I'm so happy that you share in that kind of feeling and insight. So that's one of the things that I often work to convey with the art is just being able to look outside of yourself, see, this whole other connect with people and have understanding. And that's one of the things I think in my own life with my learning difference that I've focused on is, you know, being able to understand where trying to, I actually, I can't understand. I can't look at your life and understand exactly what's going on, but I can listen, I can have empathy, and I can try not to assume. And that's one of the biggest other important things. It's so easy to see a person, I'll just take an archetype. Let's just say you see a person that's super attractive and wealthy and has great style and all this stuff. And it's so easy to, in our society, since we worship money and capitalism, at least in the West, individualness rather than, family and community. I think, not everyone, but a lot of people, I think it's easy to see these people and be like, oh, that's a perfect life. Maybe have envy or jealousy, or maybe that's your life. And if it is your life, that like you aren't happy. There are insecurities, you might be happy, but it's not a guarantee for happiness. I spend a lot of time around a lot of people from all walks of life. And some of them that are the archetype of capitalism of what you think that success, those same people need a hug. They need love, they need understanding. And, you also have, people who are, you also have people who might be, more poor, and some people might feel really bad for them. But the other day I was actually talking to this person that I think society would see as being unsuccessful. They have like a normal blue collar job, but this person basically I've developed a friendship with, and they were like, I'm so happy with my life. This person has love, they have a home, they eat well, and they just have a job they like. So like, I think we should stop judging people only on capitalism's rules of success and more look at humanity and happiness and society contribution.
Absolutely. I think, again, like you said it so well, I think that's the one thing that a lot of people misunderstand. Like success is also, it's different for everyone, and which I'll get to towards the end. I want to get to know your definition of success towards the end. But also, people misunderstand success is just this on the surface. We only see the surface of the success, the shiny aspect of success, but no one really talks about, what it takes to achieve that success, whatever that means for you. So I think the next, this is a perfect way to talk about your journey as an artist and how you really started, because I know you come from a very humble beginning, and not only that, you also overcame this learning challenges that you touched upon earlier. So walk us through your journey as an artist and how you got to that, what success, how you got to that success point that means, based on your definition of success.
Thank you for that. I totally will. Well, in um, in my beginning of my life, I grew up with a very working class environment, hippie parents. I have a younger brother. My mom was a high school teacher, and my dad was a high school teacher and a waiter. And we lived in the beginning of my life in we rented this house, and it was owned by these like the motorcycle gang people that lived in the back, but they were like the nicest people. And they were totally cool and happy. And like my family, I'd always go to Grateful Dead shows with my family and go to the restaurant with my dad and help him set up the tables. And it was actually, really nice and fun. And, I had a lot of love and respect and freedom to experiment. But then as I got older, not even that much older, but older into elementary school, I realized that people at this time in life, my learning disability was so severe. If someone like lightly pushed me, I would like fall over, and it was like kind of a physical thing. And I was in these like special classes, and kids are so, I don't know if it's still like this, or I was born in 82, if it was in the 80s and early 90s, but kids are so mean. And they're so like, I don't know if it's mean or they just don't, you know, pause to think about feelings sometimes. And kids are also so nice and creative and cool, but it's a mix. But they're it's like some of them, or it's like I might be from the, I don't know, I haven't gone into in-depth child psychology, so I don't know exactly where it's from. But the main thing is that I had a lot of bullying, and a lot of people, um, the teachers would be like, "Oh, you should read out loud," and there'd be a lot of teasing. And you know, it at the time was very hard. But when people lash out who are bullied, no, it's never good to do anything bad. But I have like a little bit of understanding that like it does become like kind of unbearable. Like bullying, people are always like, "Oh, we should stop bullying," but it's actually like a pretty bad thing. And so anyhow, because of the learning difference, I got picked up by the short yellow bus at my school in the middle of recess, which was like, extra painful thing. So, and I basically like couldn't play sports because I'm not very coordinated. And I've actually like, you know, it's hard, but I wish I could like sports today because it's such a common language. But I think I'm like scarred, and I'm like allergic to sports talk. I can't even be, but anyhow. So then I'll speed ahead. Then I like, went through high school and all this stuff. And but I was always able to communicate verbally. So I was able, luckily, to be able to talk to people, but I was able to see these different dimensions and these different worlds, and how there's different ladders in life. So then after high school, one of my good friends, Riley, was like, "Hey, do you want to move to Los Angeles?" And I said, "Sure." So we moved there together with the goal of just it was like this, Los Angeles is a special city. I don't know how it is post-pandemic or how our world is right now, but in Los Angeles, and you can just people are not so much like, what college did you go to? It's more like, what can you do? And I think, if you did go to a great school or do anything, that doesn't hurt. But so I was just there. And is this too much detail, or is this what you wanted me to tell you about?
Oh, no, I think I'll definitely continue on. Like, I love the, when we connected earlier on, I really love the aspect of like, how you transition from like
Oh,
your bike messenger days at Paramount and to blockchain, and then became like an artist.
okay. So I'll keep going. So then I was a bike messenger at Paramount making minimum wage. And it's very hard to live on minimum wage. But at this time, DVDs were still valuable. There was a place called Amoeba. They'd buy DVDs, and all these executives would just give me tons of free DVDs to go sell at Amoeba. So that kind of helped me offset my, salary of, I don't even remember how much it was, but it was like, I worked 40 hours a week, and it wasn't even enough to pay rent for half of the room I shared with someone. So I can only imagine when I see people today working at like minimum wage jobs, and then people are like yelling at them to do their job better. It's like, yo, this person probably lives in like, they could be homeless. They might live in like a house with 20 people. Like, we should treat people that are, at the financial bottom of our society with utmost respect. I think that minimum wage people, actually, some of them work the hardest. And, it's one thing. And when you look at those people, like I did that job, obviously as a white male when I was like a teenager in my early 20s, but we see a lot of people that, you know, might, there are some white people that do that. And there's some affluent people, there's people from affluent backgrounds that I don't know every single minimum wage person, but like, I think that we need to, as a society, just have more empathy and more love. So anyhow, I had this job, and then I ended up having this roommate who was a consultant at E, and he was a humongous mentor and helper in my life. And he knew about my learning disability, but he hired me to be his assistant. And I would synthesize with him some of the, go to meetings and synthesize knowledge. And, we would just work together. And he was a JD MBA and best-selling ghost author. And I just did so much learning from him about the world. His name's Brian Solon. And then through that journey, I also met this guy named Avery. And between both of those guys in my younger years, they just gave me so much mentoring and help. And it really, you know, helped propel my journey along. As one of the things I really believe in is, and neither of these guys ever wanted anything from me. It wasn't, and I'm still friends with both of them today, almost 20 years later. It's just, because they're good people and they just cared, and we had a good, intellectual connection. So anyhow, I'm doing the bike messaging job. And then after like a year plus, my boss gave me a 5 cent an hour raise. And due to like youthful hubris, and I just felt highly offended by it. And I was like, this ladder I'm on might not be getting me to my goal. So I decided to quit in the middle of the day. And that's when I came home. And then, I found Brian there and we ended up talking. That's later he had me become his assistant. But then I ended up starting a guerrilla marketing company called Strange Arcade with my friend Riley, who I originally moved to LA with. And Jill, my wife, one of her friends, she wasn't my wife, girlfriend at the time, she is this genius robotics person, and she was going to Carnegie Mellon. And I was like, hey, I want to build and she's now a professor at some like top school. I'm blanking on the name right now, but anyhow, super genius person. And I was like, I want to build a projector that's like a portable projector, because I had this idea of like making advertisements that came out of like a small box. And I realized, projectors always tell you like, oh, this can only be such this many inches by this many inches, but projectors at night can actually be 4 or 5 stories high, So we made this, really huge projector, and we presented it to Brian's fiance at the time, Ashley, who was the head of marketing at BCBG. And she hired us on the spot to go do guerrilla marketing for BCBG at Fashion Week in New York. And that's when my life drastically changed. I'm out in Fashion Week. I made friends with this other guy named Human, who was on this radio show called Alice in San Francisco for many years through Brian. And Human introduced me to this dude, Mike, who's the bass player in Green Day. And he had a fashion company at the time. And, since then I became super good friends with him. And, I ended up meeting all of these great people. Mike's known for being a musician, but he's also an amazing inventor and a kind human that propels people forward. And what I've come to find is most people are really kind. Most people want to be kind, want to be helpful. And I mean, I'm not a perfect person. I'm not 100% kind. I'll make mistakes in life, as everyone does, because we're not, but I think for the most part, people want to be doing the right thing and being good to other people. So I think that I met a lot of those people along the journey, and I ended up doing guerrilla marketing, traveling all over the world, and working with all these huge companies. My friend Patrick got me hired at this company called IMF, and that was amazing. I worked with just tons and tons of companies, but the bigger, and then I ended up merging that company with this other company called the Cobra Snake. And we had a whole network of photographers traveling all over the world. And at a time when people were buying photo content, we were like, hey, you know what? Let's make a network of photographers, send them around with musicians. Because at this time, musicians were paying to have a photographer. That financial equation doesn't make very much sense because a musician has so much social, clout and distribution. I don't really have to explain why it doesn't make sense today, because today it just seems like common logic. But that's because of our company pioneering the concept of branded content and in early influencers, and realizing the people behind the scenes that keep showing up at these, concerts are celebrities themselves. So, other people are doing it too. Well, I don't want to say that we were the only people, but definitely an early force. We ended up building this distribution network that reached 50 million people a month by putting all these photos into blogs and all this stuff. And I was just learning business as I was going. People looking back, sure, we could have built scalable technology, probably had a very successful company, but at the time I didn't really know. And we were just kind of cutting our teeth, learning how to do business kind of almost in an accidental but somewhat strategic way. And then we did Cobra Snake for many years. And during this whole time, I lived in the same apartment, because my goal in life has never been to have the flashiest car, flashiest house. Back to my definition of success, it has been to be, my first step is to be middle class retired, which I'm 38 and I reached that goal when I was 35. So, but that's not having a G-Wagon and having the fanciest house, but that's the ability to be able to travel over the world and live, again, middle class, upper middle class, retired. But my goal I try to do is be like, all right, I'm middle class, upper middle class, retired. And then what I try to do is earn towards buying my time and buying my own freedom from society, because I think that time, isn't a replaceable asset. So unless whenever people like don't love their jobs and have fancy things, I drastically question their logic, because it's like, well, why would you trade time, a finite asset, to be able to earn things at a job you don't like? Seems to me it would be much smarter to not have these things and to have more time. Now, I am attracted to fancy things just because, again, I'm not completely Zen, but I can't enjoy anything fancy if I'm having to sell my soul all day long. So I have to get to my fanciness a little bit slower, because I have to help people and animals along the way, and my friends. And then, I can enjoy something. I also don't like to drive cars, but cars only have I have a perfect driving record. I just don't like to drive. And the thing is that cars only have one method of communication, which is a horn. So the only way cars can talk to each other is basically yelling at each other, and I think that it is not, I find that when people drive and just being in cars, it's a very uptight experience, So anyhow, then then I made this company called Pinata with a few friends, my buddy Duffs, this other guy from Fox, this other guy who co-created Siri was an advisor, and this guy Lee, and we had this person Kim, we had all these cool people on it. But that was a cool startup. It was another great life lessons and learning, and we had all this fun. But along the journey, I used to go to all this different computer stuff, hang out with my friend Barrett, who's this financial genius and liberal person, which is a great combo in my book, but I do respect everyone's politics. And I would be, so around 2013, 2014, I'm always looking for community, so I was going to these hacker clubs, and just not hacking bad things, but just people putting code and different stuff together. I got really inspired from this buddy of mine named Krudel. We used to do consulting together when I had Strange Arcade, and he had another consulting company with all these, tech people. But anyhow, the thing about tech community is, an open source stuff is, it's like, it's so beautiful, and people are into sharing and being friendly and doing all this stuff. I also felt a great community when I did marketing and did like the rebranding for or guerrilla marketing branding for cool people for Star Trek and, paranormal activity and all this fun stuff. But, basically, back to, so then I got into blockchain by going to the hacker club. And, I ended up trading these magic cards I had from when I was a child to this guy for $30,000 at the time worth of Bitcoin in 2014, which was another life-changing event. And then I just met all these people, and I've been advocating for blockchain because I love that it's decentralized and it can empower people. And, with NFTs, it's cool that everyone's getting involved in the community now, but there's so many people I talk to that, don't even understand blockchain or anything. And I hope that more people learn about it because it's not that hard. It just takes a focus, and some little bit of energy. But so that's basically was a huge thing. And then, a few years ago, I was working with my friend Clayton. He co-founded Skrillex's record label, and we were doing a lot of crypto consulting together. And we started working with this company, Tune. And Tune was founded by this genius guy, Bjorn. And I met them through my friends at 360. And WME introduced me to 360. I always like to give people credit because a lot of times people just like to say they did it all themselves, but it takes a village, and later on I'll have to thank you for this, allowing me to do this long monologue. But it's, it's just, so, I was doing this consult. So Bjorn now has one of the biggest music companies called Rocky, and Clayton's working at Audius. So, and some of the founders of that original company were also the founders of CryptoPunks and this other DJ guy. So, I've always been connecting. I'm often, if you connect with me, it's typical that you'll find success in like 2 to 3 years because I'm always like too early. And then it'll be like, oh, yeah, I literally have like a track record of too early in life. But it's sometimes beneficial and sometimes it's too early. But a lot of the art's driven by these type of things.
I mean, you touched upon many, many amazing points. Wow, I'm just blown away because like every point in your life, you touched upon is so relevant, and it's really like embodiment of like what I in my book, like what legendary artist is. And I really appreciate that, like you pointed out, like you value your time because time is non-renewable resource, and you're actually focusing on how to maximize your time, right? Like now you earn that success, right? Like through your careers, like those winding journeys that you mentioned earlier, but now you're retired, comfortably retired at an early age, which is really unheard of, right? But then you're not just focusing on how do I make more money, but it's like, how do I buy more time?
Exactly.
And create an impact, right? And so, now that you're retired, maybe you could touch upon how you were practicing your retirement and working in art.
Thank you for that. I mean, so, I had always wanted to do art for my whole life, but I had this like insecurity that I had to do business first. But actually, over the course of this year, I mean, not including blockchain has been the most lucrative thing I've ever done. So I'm going to remove that as an incredible stroke of luck and good positioning. But outside of that, this year, art has actually been more lucrative for me than any business thing I had done on a, well, actually it's on the journey to being there in some way. So I'd say on an average, because there's been business things that have been really lucrative on moments, but if you amortize all of it out, the whole business career, then yes, art would be bigger. But now I've reached a place where the smallest thing I'm selling is 10 grand, and this year I sold an art piece for over 100K. So it's like sometimes I have this like inner regret. I'm trying to let go of regrets where I'll be like, oh shoot, if I had believed in myself as an artist from the beginning, where might I be today? But that's actually a very bad way to think, because I might not have, first of all, I'm learning how to manage all this time within retirement is an art. It takes, at least for me, I don't think I would have been ready to have done this at a younger time. I may have done poor decision making because it takes a lot of self-discipline. And that's the thing about life is like, I am like a crazy, wild person where I like to have a lot of fun and be absolutely insane and do things that are, not pattern matching at all and break every single rule in society. But part of the balance of that is saying, hey, even though I don't have a boss, I'm going to wake up today at 6 a.m., do fitness, eat right, and then go paint for 8 hours or 10 hours today, every day, and really work on this craft, whether or not I am having the motivation to do that or not. So I think having that self-discipline is really, really important. And I actually, this is not true of everyone, but I actually learn a lot from a lot of the female mentors in my life. I found that like, and this might just be the men I know and the women I know, but I found that women that I know at least are incredibly better at time management. So I try to take a book out of the page from a lot of female entrepreneurs that I'm friends with and learn tips and tricks from them to improve that skill set. And to all the men out there that are great time managers, maybe I haven't talked to you about your skills or I don't know it yet. Actually, I have a couple friends that are men that are really good time managers that just, I don't have that same disposition. So it's hard for me, but because some people are like, you have to just do it. But I like to hear a strategy that's helpful for me on the doing it and what not to do. But that's a big thing for me on art and retirement is empowering people. And it's not just empowering people in the traditional, I'd probably be fired from like a nonprofit. My empowerment situation is not saying, hey, you know, you're the best every day. It's more like, hey, unplug from this, give yourself a trophy for, doing nothing situation and, give yourself, sorry, just had to give yourself a, you know, like don't give yourself a reward for doing nothing, but actually do something and challenge yourself and practice extreme self-discipline to get to your goals, So what I'm working on right now is putting my intentions out in the world. In fact, that guy, Adam Shire, from co-founder of Siri, who used to be, an advisor at my old company, he told me this great story once that I really liked. And Adam, if I'm butchering this at all, then I apologize. But it went something like, you and I, let's say Nina and I are going to go to the store and we're in the car together. You could go into the store and say, hey, do you want a piece of fruit? And I could say, sure. But then you'd have to walk all around the fruit aisle. You don't know exactly what I want, but it seems nicer to just say, sure, fruit, whatever. But it's actually nicer if I said, yes, I'd like to have a medium-sized Fiji organic apple. That makes your task at the store like a heck of a lot easier, So what I'm working on right now is setting out my intentions. Last night I had dinner with four, powerful tech people. And I told them like, hey, what I'm looking for right now is late stage companies that want art to give me cash and to pay me in cash and stock for me to do art at the companies. For early stage companies, I want to trade stock for art. And I'm looking to connect with buyers that have an appreciation for fine art and are having collections of other, really good art that I could join their collections in. And right now I have a 6-month waiting list, unless I speed up my painting, for people doing commissions, which I feel like really thankful about. So I just kind of feel like because there's all this demand, I want to start making the art for the, being a little bit more choosy of who I'm even selling to.
That's really incredible. Like I said, I mean, like everything you said is just like incredible. And like I said, you brought out like a really good point in terms of like self-discipline. I think that's one thing that's people don't understand about artists, is that artists, like for me, my definition of legendary artists is that like they are really disciplined. And
Mhm.
when people generally speaking, like, oh, artists just have fun and do whatever they want and be reckless and all the time, but it's not true, right? But behind the scenes, they may look like it during the openings and parties, right? They may look like
Yeah,
going crazy things, but in retrospect and behind the scene, that's not what it is, right? It takes a lot of work, hard work and discipline to achieve, to get to where they are, whether it's like, create a work that's more impactful. So yeah, in your case, I mean, really appreciate you brought on another point in terms of like how, like your intention, setting up the intentions, right? And having that clarity of what you want, and putting it out there, right, like it's not like you're not sending me on a wild goose chase to find something, just giving me one word, I want a fruit, but like you're not sending me out on a wild goose chase at all. You are very specific about what you want, like your intent, right? You're like putting it out there in the world. And like you said, you literally talk to people and see what comes
yeah,
up.
totally. Because I know so many people that, on one hand, I mean, I don't, people sometimes come to me and are like, "Hey, can you help me sell art?" What they should really be asking is like, "Can you help me have self-discipline to A, create, and B, build a community?" And building a community doesn't mean building. It's not, you can't. I wouldn't even suggest people that if they're selling art, they're doing anything. First, you have to show up for other people. So you might be chilling at home, enjoying Netflix, super snuggly and warm in your bed. And someone might say to you, "Hey, you know, Nina, do you want to come to my party that's going to be like an hour and a half for you in traffic? You have to get ready. You have to be around all these people that you might not even want to spend time with." But part of building a community is saying, "Yes, I will go. I will get out of bed and do that." And then when you go there, being the best you and meeting all the people there and being friendly. And it takes years and years and years to do that. And then after that is accomplished, and when people talk to you about, so many people are just so quick to talk about themselves, not ask any questions and not learn about what other people are doing. Sometimes I talk to people and I'll be like, "Oh, that person seemed cool. There might be friends with them." And I'll be like, "Oh, what do they do?" And people are like, "I don't really know." It's like, well, that person's your friend. They're spending their whole life doing something. Maybe you should ask them and like know about it, and care.
Again, I think you raised a very good point in terms of like you have to, in order to build a community, you have to lead yourself first, right? Like you have to be the leader. And leader is not someone who just tells people what to do, but you have to be that person, like the group you want to lead. And not only that, it's also, you brought out a good point in terms of building community, right? Like, and asking good questions. I think a lot of times people are so focused on themselves and mostly taking the space to just like talk about themselves just on and on without any intention, without any specific goals, without even asking that other person, the other end, like what they really want, right? It's like trying to sell something, right? Like you give it like pitch deck, right? Like entrepreneurs, like sometimes we get into that pitfall. Like you go to the investor, in front of the investors, you pitch your idea, but without even like knowing what the investors really want, right? Like not doing their
Yeah,
homework in advance.
exactly. Exactly. I mean, you have to sell people what they already want to buy, especially right now. We're in a time in the world where there's literally an endless amount of VC money if you're doing the right thing. Money's cheap right now, and they can't give away enough money, but it has to be in line with someone's investment thesis. And so many people, and yeah, the idea has to not be like, it has to work. So many people want things without really caring about what the person that's giving them is getting. And that's really the key. An investor obviously wants to innovate and they want to make money because they have to then go to their LPs and explain why their fund is working so they can then raise another fund. They don't even care. Well, they don't care today about fund one. They're caring about raising against it. So if people even don't even have to have an exit plan, but if they can go to someone and say, "Hey, here's my pitch, and here's why it's going to be 100 times or 10 times more valuable next year," that might actually be better for a lot of VCs to hear than the end goal, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to, come back to shift the focus to the like artists, like as an art experienced artist and having a lot of business experience, like what are the biggest lessons that you've learned from business that can be translated into art? And what advice would you have for artists from those experiences that you had?
Well, that's a good question. I think the biggest thing, and it goes back to building community and everything, is being able to show up for people and being able to care. When you're selling something, it's not really again about what you're giving that person. It's a, it has obviously there's a hair of that, but a lot of commerce in art or in anything has to do with a reciprocation. You know, people wouldn't buy or sell stock if you bought stock and you didn't think you could resell it. So people, when they're buying art, you're selling someone an idea or anything, they want to have an ongoing relationship. They want the art, they want to hope that the art's going to go up in value, but they also want you to be available to have dinner with them. And they want to make sure that if they, want something in your network, that you can then help them with that. So they're really buying into the network of you, and friendship and ideas. Those are all just as important as the physical good.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you brought up those points. I think it's so important, right? Especially art and any industry, it's about based on trust and like who you know, right? And sometimes it's not all about the skill sets. And I mean, that's important too, but it's also about like building trust and be able to connect, as a human to human. It's not about just the commodity. You're not trying to just push the commodity and
Yeah.
try to sell it. It's not all about that.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. So, that's an important thing. I think a lot of times when people ask for advice for anything, whether it's art or a lot of things in life, a lot of people have a preconceived notion of what the answer is. And a lot of times they'll just keep asking multiple people until someone gives them the same answer that they already have in their mind.
Or they want to hear what they want
Yeah,
to
or they want to
hear.
hear.
Yeah.
And most people want to keep fishing around for the easiest answer. Normally, it may be the simplest answer, but it's not always, it depends on your life, but it may not be the easiest. And I think that, it's really just important to listen. So easy is it to ask questions, but it's so hard to listen.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I want to speed up. I mean, I have so many questions. I mean, we could just like be here all day because there were so many,
Oh,
you
yeah.
brought up so many amazing points. And I also want to point out in terms of like, looking back, like what advice you wish you had when you were starting out as an artist?
Oh, that's a good question. Back to self-discipline. I think that people often, when they talk about art, are talking about the art itself. I don't think it's very hard to have a business idea. I don't think it's hard to create it's not hard to think of ideas for art. It's hard to execute them. It's hard to do it consistently and on time and work you're proud of. I think that that's a really important thing. I mean, an incredible fine artist, this guy David Ayer, who's also a director, he talks a lot about self-discipline, and focusing and ideas. And I think that that's a really, really important thing, is having self-discipline and focus. I have this other, good buddy of mine named Rob, and, he bakes a lot of bread, and people are like, oh, I've always wanted to bake, but like, he also grows his own grain and, takes it there and like puts in the time. And that's why it tastes so good. So I think that in order to take a step forward, sometimes I wish people had gone to me and said, hey, before even caring about selling art, why don't you get into self-discipline, get into a regular routine? That's the thing, is like, to any artists out there or any creators, And you might have a full-time job, so maybe you can only do an hour a day, or maybe you can do 2 hours a day, but it's about spend a year doing something an hour a day or 2 hours a day, and then you don't even have to try to do something else. It'll just organically happen.
Absolutely,
You know?
absolutely. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think again, I think like, as a society is like we were sort of trained, like, we are so focused on fixated on the exterior, the shininess, right? Like, and then we tend to focus on like, oh, I have to get there. And sometimes we just have to like try this and try that. I mean, I'm not saying like trying, like experimenting is bad, but sometimes like people lose focus on that because they see some shiny things happening and they lose focus on what they really want to do and what's more important to them, and they get sidetracked and kind of fall behind their goals, right? Speaking of like the trends and goals, like, do you have any advice? Because since you've been such an early adapter, right? Like it's a good and a bad thing. You mentioned earlier being in too early, but it could be a blessing, right? In most cases. So like having that experience working in blockchain space for like since 2014, do you have any advice for artists who are interested in breaking into NFTs or blockchain space? Because there's so much noise out there and it can be really overwhelming and daunting. So do you have any advice in terms of for artists who
Yeah.
want to break into that space?
Well, and it doesn't have to be tons of money. It can be a little bit, but I think actually starting out supporting blockchain is all about supporting the community, and validating other people. So before starting out, again, I always believe in giving before asking to receive. So if you start out by even at what there's art at every price. And you can't really say, oh, I'm going to wait till I sell something and then redo the money. That's a selfish thing. It doesn't matter if you have $50 to start, but if you go out and find some other artists, comment on their work, and actually buy something for $1 or $2 and start being a collector of other people like yourself, whatever level you're at on price point, then if you can afford to buy art at a whole bunch of art at $50, and you don't already have a big community, then on this drop, a lot of the collection's $20 because it wants to be accessible to everyone. And I think that's really important. With NFTs, if you have a community and a market that can pay the higher prices, you can do both. But I think it's three things. One is to buy art you can afford and support fellow artists. The other is to make stuff at an accessible price point, and then you can make stuff at a higher price point as well. And those are the main things.
Yeah, I love that. That's amazing. Um, so the final, I mean, like the last question, I think I don't want to keep anyone, I want to be mindful of everyone's time. So coming back to the question of success, what's your definition of success? What does that look like for you?
I think you have to have the basic minimums covered of being able to have however you like to eat, your food, your rent, or your house paying, however you live, paid for. That's the first step. The second part is being able to have your own time be yours. So, I also think it's important to have love in your life. So if you don't have love, I think it's important to dedicate a little bit of time to finding that. And if you do have love, I think it's important to spend time nurturing that relationship and not being only focused on your career. So you kind of take care of the bare necessities and then the love nurturing or finding. And then, because I think that it elevates the human experience. And then after that, I think for me, it's having a lot of free time and not free to just, again, do nothing. But there is something valuable about staying home and doing nothing. And being able to then, from that place of free time and healthy body, healthy mindset, is to then go out and accomplish your goals, whatever they are. And I think it's really important to give back. I mean, if you look at the life story I probably said 95% male names helping on this journey. It's important to say, oh, well, what race were those people? So a lot of them are white, not every single person, but you've got a heavily white male gendered network there. So maybe, for me, part of success is being open and saying, all right, I do have a huge female network as well and a diverse race network, but it's important that everyone, I think, when you get towards your success, isn't just staying in a pattern matching society of the sameness. So that doesn't matter if you are, you know, whatever race and gender you are, your whole group should not be identical to yourself. So part of success to me is pushing myself into different cultures, different areas of people, making new friends and learning and constantly growing. So that's kind of a convoluted answer, but that, and pushing forward my own philosophical understanding of being alive during this time in history.
That's really amazing. I so appreciate you bringing it up, like, expanding and growing and being open to other cultures. And I know it's been such a issue in general, right? Like whether you're in a business setting with entrepreneurs, also art world is, having challenges at the moment where women artists were not very represented in history. Now we're slowly going back and bringing out the history again, because it wasn't such thing as that there weren't any great women artists. It was just not been talked about, and now we're definitely bringing that to the foreground and forefront, saying yes, there are plenty of female artists there were great. They've just not been mentioned,
not recognized, and that's wrong, and that needs to be fixed. And and we need to work together as a society in success to make sure that everyone has an equal spotlight and an equal chance at being elevated and celebrated. And that's something else I hope other people will do on their journey to success, is like, it's like you can't, a society and a person can't have success until everyone around is also taken care of. So I have to dedicate part of any success you have to helping elevate other people. And I see a lot of people that are like, I'll focus 99% on me and only 1% on other people. But the most successful people I know help people all the time, and it elevates them and it elevates other people. And I think that's the most important way to live.
Absolutely. And for you, how are you also doing that in terms of like giving back and like contributing to people around you?
Well, this year, I spent a month volunteering in Mississippi, and helping this one of the poorest communities in the country have art, and helping people get involved and have access to doing art and inspiring hope. And that's a really important thing, because it's easy to be like, oh, they could just go on the internet. A lot of people don't have the internet, and that's a thing. You can't assume that. So that's something I did there. And then these days, right now, I have a whole bunch of different people that I spend tons of time with. If anyone that comes to me, I can't give them all my time, but I try to help people get new jobs, new careers, understand the different pathways to success. There's a lot of opportunities out there. It's not people's fault if they don't know where to look or what the network is. And I just try to, young artists or any age artists, someone that comes to me and it's like, hey, what do you think about this piece? What's your opinion? Might be right or wrong, but I'll share people the opinion. And I just try to let people know that, it's possible. If I can read and write at a 5th grade level, and have all these different challenges and retire when I'm 35, if you have the full skill set and you have drive and you're nice and you're at least half intelligent, you can accomplish a lot.
That's really amazing. That's really beautifully said, and I so appreciate you for what you do. And also setting an example, right? Like you overcame so many challenges that most people like think, oh my God, like it's impossible, right? Like you had a learning disability, and like probably most of people around you say, oh, like it's impossible for him to do anything. But look where you are now. Like you actually turned it around, right? Like you used your learning disability became your gift in ways,
Yeah,
right? Like it help you
good.
see things differently and like be able to explain things like different ways, but easier way for people to connect and understand.
Totally, exactly. So
Amazing.
that's, yeah, it's been a great blessing. And thanks for having me on the show today and sharing this with your community.
Oh my God, it's been an absolute honor and pleasure. I see Jessica is up, but like I just want to know, do you have any questions before we wrap up? Jessica? Hello,
Well,
Jessica, are you on?
that's okay.
It's okay. But last question is, how do people connect with you? What's the best way to for people to connect?
Well, I think finding me on Instagram at Good Energy is a great way to connect. And I look at the messages from people on there that I don't follow like once a week or once a month. And then if it's people coming with like a friendly time, then I try to you know, connect with them.
Amazing, amazing.
Yeah,
That's really amazing. But can you just hold on after I stop the recording? But I just
sure.
want to, well, again, thank you so much for taking your Sunday to be
Yeah.
with us, to share all your journeys. It's just so inspiring to hear, all these winding journeys, but that has to lead to a really beautiful and rewarding place. So if you have a last remark, please share before we stop the recording.
Okay. Yeah, well, I think it's really important that not every day is amazing. And part of practicing good energy is to remember that there'll be some days that are great, some that aren't. It's more about the long tail journey of your life. And, sometimes everyone has desperation and times when it feels like things won't work out and is nervous, and it's emotionally exposing to be an artist and to put yourself out there, or it can be emotionally exposing to be an entrepreneur or to do anything in life. And it's just so important to give empathy to other people and know that everyone's feeling exposed emotionally, and we can just give each other all a big hug and try to do small things of niceness in your day. Maybe you're walking down the street and you're on the sidewalk and a car is like sticking out because they want to turn. Sometimes I'll say, all right, let's stop and wave the person on, let them go. That small act might have made their whole day better. And that might have sent a wave of good energy and positivity through the world. So I think that the more little deeds of kindness you can do in your day, the more it will help, naturally respond goodness in your own life.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's also a good reminder for us to keep in mind as we go through our day or through next week. And yeah, I so appreciate you sharing your wisdom and journey with us today. And thank you all for joining us. Yeah, stay well and be
Okay.
well and keep the good energy going. Thank you so
Sounds
much.
great. Thanks
Bye,
for having me.
everyone. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Thanks.